In the medieval times, Beverley was a busy and important town. Some of the buildings from that time can still be found, including St Mary's Church and Beverley Minster. But as you can imagine, life was very different then to how we live now. In this video, we're going to explore medieval life and society. This includes looking into medieval towns. How did they sound? What did they smell like? We're also going to explore what it was like to live and work in medieval Beverley. Medieval Beverley was one of the largest and richest towns in England. The streets of Beverley were narrow, busy and noisy. They were full of merchants selling their goods and people cooking food. There also would have been lots of visiting pilgrims coming to see the tomb of St John of Beverley in the Minster. Medieval houses were made of wood and sealed with a combination of clay and horse dung. The roofs were thatched, with a hole to let the smoke from the fire inside out. Beverley might have smelt quite bad. The air would have been full of the smells of cooking food and smoke, as well as waste and garbage in the streets. One of the reasons why medieval Beverley was such an important place was because of all the trade happening in the town. In particular, Beverley was famous for its leather, cloth and wool trade. These goods were made in the town and then sold to Europe, travelling out of the port at Hull. Medieval shops were quite different to most of our modern ones. Shops were also workshops, meaning that this was where the goods were made as well as where they were sold. The shop was open to the street for customers to come in. The craftsmen then lived in the house above. Few medieval people could read, so instead of showing writing, shop signs were huge models of what that particular shop sold. A modern reproduction of such a sign can be seen in Beverley, on the corner of Wheatsheaf Lane. This sign shows a leather tunic and is here because in the medieval period, leather tunics were made and traded in this area. People of the same trade tended to all work in the same area. As a result, some streets became named after the jobs that happened there. For example, in Beverley we have a street called Butcher Row. Groups of medieval craftspeople and merchants would join up to form what is called a guild. Members of these guilds would work together to set the standard for the quality and price of the goods they sold. There were loads of different guilds in Beverley, including bakers, blacksmiths, glovers, and even minstrels, who were medieval musicians. Guilds were really important groups and brought a lot of prestige and power to the people in them. In the medieval times, there were about 20 days a year which were religious holy days. In fact, holy day is where the word holiday comes from. On these holy days, there would be feasts, celebrations, and processions throughout the town. During these processions, Beverley's different guilds would compete against each other to see who could make the best and most exciting display. As we've seen, life in medieval Beverley was quite different to life today. In St Mary's Church in Beverley, we're lucky enough to have art and decoration surviving from that time that can tell us a bit more about what it was like to live then. The ceiling of St Mary's Church is full of wooden carvings called roof bosses. In these bosses are many depictions of everyday medieval life. For example, we can see merchants carrying their bundles of wool, either under their arms or on their horse. We can also see different medieval hobbies and pastimes, including wrestling, drinking ale, and bear baiting, which was a blood sport. We also have quite a few faces in the bosses, which can suggest what people looked like and what clothes they wore. Beyond people, among the bosses we can also find religious symbols, as well as all kinds of curious mythical beasts and animals. Among the bosses we can find a centaur, which was part horse and part man, a mermaid, and even a unicorn. Nowadays, we recognise that these creatures aren't real, but when these carvings were made, they were very much thought to represent living, breathing animals. So, the carvings in St Mary's Church can not only tell us what the people of medieval Beverley looked like, but can also tell us what jobs they did, what they believed, and how they understood the world in which they lived. In this way, our roof bosses provide a unique window back into medieval Beverley and the people who lived and worked there.